Hi everyone. This is part 2 to the lab that covers tissue. So for part 2 of lab 2. And so this is going to be a pretty short video because I'm just talking about connective tissue. Connective tissue is really interesting tissue. It's very diverse as a class. So here we have blood. So blood is a fluid, right? So we don't necessarily think of fluids as tissues, but blood is a tissue. This is a type of cartilage, and then this is a more generalized connective tissue called reticular connective tissue that's found in things like the lymph nodes and the spleen. Connective tissue has a very generalized structure. Connective tissue has some things in common. So this is the reason why connective tissue is because it consists of living cells that are kind of suspended in a non-living extracellular matrix. So in this is an example of like a general connective tissue. Here we have a macrophage, a lymphocyte, a mast cell, and a neutrophil. These cells probably don't mean very much to you. These are all white blood cells or immune cells. Here's a fibroblast, which is a cell that makes these fibers. Here's a fat cell or a lymphocyte. Here's some capillaries. So there's many different types of cells in this particular connective tissue. When you look at bones, there's far fewer types of cells. But some of the like the dense regular and dense irregular and loose connective tissue, you're going to see a lot of different types of cells. Okay, so those are the cells. And then we have the extracellular matrix. And the extracellular matrix has fibers. You're going to see collagen fibers and elastin fibers and reticular fibers. Many different types of fibers in some tissues. And there's also ground substance. And so ground substance is kind of like the jelly. It is a fluidy, but kind of a viscous, thick fluid substance. So this is the ground substance. These are the fibers. We have blood vessels, and we have different types of cells. So there are subclasses in connective tissue. There's loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, there's fluid connective tissue, and supporting connective tissue. So the loose connective tissue, we only use two examples. So there's areolar and there's adipose tissue. Both of these have very loosely arranged extracellular protein fibers. So in areolar tissue, here's the cells, and here are these very loosely arranged fibers. In adipose tissue, you can't see the fibers so well, but I wanted to indicate, so this is a cell right here. That whole thing is a cell. And so that is a pretty large cell, right? And so you can see only one nucleus on each of these bubbles. And so that's how we know this whole bubble is a single cell. Okay. Here we have dense connective tissue. So we just looked at loose connective tissue. Now we have dense connective tissue. And there's a large amount of really densely woven extracellular protein fibers, right? And so you can see it almost looks like threads here. And so we have dense regular tissue and we have dense irregular tissue. The dense regular tissue, it almost looks like there's waves, right? And here's the nuclei that are riding those waves. And in the dense irregular tissue, it's always looked to me like ground beef, right? So if you can see the nuclei here, but if you see a slide that looks like ground beef, I apologize for the FedEx truck going by. If you see a slide that looks like ground beef, you're looking at dense irregular. And if you see a slide that reminds you of beautiful ocean waves with nuclei, surfboards, then you're looking at dense regular. We have that fluid connective tissue, and the fluid connective tissue example we have is blood. So we have red blood cells and white blood cells and a fluid extracellular matrix of plasma. And you may be thinking, hey, there's no fibers in blood, but there actually is. The fibers that are in blood are usually in solution. But if we get a cut, those fibers come out of solution and form kind of a webbing that stops bleeding, right? And so those are the fibers that make blood connective tissue. And last but not least, we have the supporting connective tissue. Bone is, the one that we most commonly think of. And bone is just beautiful. It looks kind of like tree cross sections, right? So these are sections of bone, right? And so there's very, very densely packed fibers in the matrix. And the matrix also has a lot of calcium salts, which makes it really hard. These black kind of spidery things are the cells. And the cells are found in these little openings between the matrix called lacunae. Another supporting connective tissue is hyaline cartilage. Hyaline cartilage is found at the ends of our bones. It's also found in the C-rings that form our trachea. Hyaline cartilage is by far my favorite tissue. I just think it's beautiful. There was a woman a few years back who actually printed hyaline cartilage on silk, and I'm so sad that I was not able to get one of those silk scarves because I just think it's gorgeous. So now you know my favorite tissue, and I can't wait to see yours. And that covers our connective tissue. So I hope this video is helpful with your field guide to tissues, your lab manual if you have it, and your textbook also have all of this material and will help guide you along your journey into tissue understanding. Take care.